Okay, now we're going to go on to our wonderful program. And we are honored to have Senator Eggman speak to us today. Senator Eggman represents California's 5th Senate District, which as a result of redistricting will become Livermore and Dublin's State Senate District beginning in 2025. Senator Eggman grew up on an almond farm in Turlock, and upon high school graduation, joined the Army and served 4 years as a medic. After leaving the Army, she completed a bachelor's degree in psychology, which we know comes in useful for politics, and a master's degree in social work from California State University, Stanislaus, and after working in the field, a PhD from Portland State University. After serving on the Stockton City Council, she served in the California Assembly for 4 terms before being elected to California Senate in 2020. Senator Eggman is the chair of the Senate Health Committee and is a member of the Senate Committees on Business, Professions and Economic Development, Energy, Utilities and Communications, and the Natural Resources and Water Committee. She also serves on the Budget Subcommittee number 3 on Health and Human Services, the Joint Legislation Audit Committee, and the Joint Legislative Committee on Emergency Management. And so sometimes she finds time to come and visit us. And although Senator Eggman's term ends in 2024, she wants to speak to us about her work in the state Senate, including legislation and LGBTQ issues, and introduce us to the work of her office and district. So please give a warm.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation to come out and talk to you a little bit today. When they redrew the lines, I was so excited to think that I was going to represent Alameda County. I grew up in Castro Valley. I was born at Eden Hospital, and my dad had a produce market on Castro Valley Boulevard when I was born, and went to the market every morning and got fresh produce. But he was a lifelong beekeeper. We come from a beekeeping family, so he had he always did bees on the side, and he had a warehouse he rented right over here in Livermore. So I feel like Livermore is part of my home, and we moved down to Turlock. And so during my time in the legislature, I have been able to represent San Joaquin County, where I have lived and made my life, Stanislaus County, where I grew up, and I thought for a minute Alameda County, which has also been a big part of my past, that I was excited about doing. So it is with great regret that I will not be able to be your representative. But I feel like I try to be a real voice for Northern California and all of our interests. We are so outnumbered by my friends in Southern California that we really have to band together and be as smart as we possibly can to be effective. I'm also very happy to see, though, when I term out, I want to leave my district in good hands, and Rhodesia Ransom is here. As a lot of people know her, and she will be receiving my support for my seat after I leave. Because that's one of the things I feel like I've been able to really build a legacy in the Senate, and I want someone to be able to step into that, that's going to be able to carry on the kind of work that I've done. Historically, San Joaquin County and Central Valley have been seen as real red areas. And I'm the first one that's kind of been able to break through and say, we can be blue, we can be purple, and we can still really try to work for the good of all people. And so it's been effective. When I first ran in 2005 for Stockton City Council, people said, you know, you're a woman, you're a Latina, and you're a lesbian, nobody's ever going to vote for you. And I just thought, well, that's their business, but I'm going to run. And I will not ever lie about who I am.
Hi.
People voted for me, and I have been lucky enough not to lose an election.
I think she's getting hot. Yeah,
an honor of my life. My mom's family came from Mexico. My mom's first
that's
generation.
the first time she's moved in an hour. She's just been sitting there like this.
I just really felt an affinity with him as a
I
Democrat.
got my legs in the sun and the rest of me in the shade.
That he stood for. So it's always, politics has always been a part of my life, not as an active member, but just as somebody who really understood that our process is what provides us with education and healthcare and public roads and all the things that my family believed in really make a community great. I remember my mom getting a lot of flack back when Prop 13 went through, but she was one of the few people who didn't vote for it in our neighborhood, and the flack she took for that back then. But it's something that I carry on, those kinds of values that we really have to look out for everybody else. That's why I always like to speak to groups like this, because I know you are really putting your feet and your power behind your values. Politics has become such a spectator sport. It saddens me that people sit on the sidelines with all kinds of criticisms versus trying to get in and actually make things better and do their part. And so I appreciate you and want to thank all of you for doing your part to make things good. So I will say one of the first things that I chair the LGBT caucus this year. We have made history this year in California by electing 12 members of the LGBTQ community, which makes the first state legislature to have 10% of their body be LGBT. I will say that the same amount of Republicans that are in the legislature. That's just something the voters said, not me. But that's kind of where we are right now in California. So one of the first things that we're doing this year is we are going to do a ballot initiative, get it through the legislature, and then get it to the ballot. Because as people remember, while the courts overthrew Prop 8, the voters voted for it and put it into our Constitution. That marriage is only between a man and a woman. So that still sits in our Constitution, despite the laws said that it is unjust. So we want to get that removed from the Constitution. We feel very good about democracy in America right now with President Biden, but you don't know what's coming next. And we've seen the kind of scares that we can have if we don't have our eyes on those balls, and we don't want to go back. So we're going to work to get that on the ballot in 24. So you can be looking out for that. One of the big things that I continue to work on, and especially as the chair of health, and I'll be partnering with the governor again this year, is working on our issues of mental health as they intersect most specifically with the homeless population. Of course, not everybody who is homeless has mental health issues, and not everybody with mental health issues are homeless, but there is a nexus where those two things overlap. And I think like we did with our forests a lot of times, right? We said we're cutting old growth, that's bad. We went to doing nothing, and then we've had wildfires because we haven't maintained and cared for our forests. We did the same thing with people. We locked people up because we didn't like a lot of things about them. And then we realized, oh, that's not good. And then we went to not being able to hold anybody to provide care for them when they can't make decisions for themselves. So I did the care court last year with the governor, hopefully a new way of doing things that really will hold the counties and the systems of care responsible for providing care for those who are most in need of it. It's already the county's responsibility, but a lot of times they don't make that a priority because the folks that we're talking about are some of the most hardest to treat. So they get to the back of the list. We want to make sure they're to the front of the line and get the services that they need. We'll also continue to work on things like the expansion of healthcare for as many people as possible, despite going into somewhat of a recession. We still, last year we passed the law that said that everybody gets healthcare regardless of your immigration status. We had it up to 25, and then we had it over 55. So now we've got the entire spectrum. It doesn't matter what your status is. If you qualify based on your income, that you'll be able to receive healthcare insurance. Some of those, some of the big things that we continue to work on, that I continue to work on. Of course, as you know, we're going into recession this year. That's going to be different. So we're not going to have the amount of funding that we've had available. But good news is that we've been able to put so much into our reserves and so much into our rainy day that we're not going to have to make the cuts that we made back in the day, that we think that we'll be able to ride this out. And while we've heard a lot about tech jobs leaving, an interesting thing the economists tell us is that there's been no uptick in unemployment, because for right now, there's like 3 jobs for every person. So even though some of the tech jobs are off-playing people, those folks are getting jobs right away. So it's kind of an interesting world in the world of economics, that what you expect to see, we're not really seeing. So it's very good news for everybody. And it looks like whatever little recession we're in, we're starting to come back out again. Of course, as everybody here knows, the biggest issue to address our homelessness is more housing. So we need more housing at every single level. We just saw a bunch of cities who hadn't met their housing goals that they're going to be held accountable to that in ways that they haven't been before. I don't know what Livermore's housing plans are. I see a lot of building going on. So I hope you guys are in compliance with being able to, not yet, we're working there. Very close, very close. That's good. That's good. So my current district is, I don't know if you know, but it's all of San Joaquin County, half of Stanislaus County, and a little sliver of Sacramento County. And again, the next person who will represent you will lose all of Stanislaus County and Sacramento County and be all of San Joaquin and then this part of Alameda. So I can always talk forever, but I always find it more helpful if people are able to ask me questions about what they're interested in specific. To be able to meet your needs, yes. So the care court it is not criminal court, it is a civil court. So the counties, and there are 7 counties that volunteer to say we want to go first. And then Los Angeles County has since joined them. So they will go online in October, the first 7 counties, and then LA County will go online in December. So they are all the counties are meeting as it stands now. So the way care court is going to work is that somebody can make a referral. You know, you have a loved one, somebody who is on the streets, you don't know where they are in and out of jails and prison and being hurt. You can refer them to the care court process, which means that a team from the county will come out and do an assessment on that person. The assessment would say if they're appropriate for the care court or they are not. So they have to have some kind of psychiatric diagnosis. And that has to be, as we would say, I'm also a licensed clinician, an access 1 type of diagnosis, which is going to be schizophrenia, severe bipolar, and or severe intoxication due to methamphetamine that oftentimes can make one behave in psychotic ways. Then that person will be evaluated. That person will come before a judge with a helper, and that helper can be somebody that they choose or somebody that the civil system will choose for them. That person will also have like a public defender, and then they will go before a judge that will be a special judge, like like you have drug court, veterans court, those kinds of courts. So again, it is not civil. I mean, it is not criminal, it is civil. That plan then comes together and the judge will approve that plan for that person with that person's input into that plan. Then that person and that county has to maintain that plan. And when a huge part of that is wraparound services and housing. Those things have to go together, right? They have to be able to get the treatment and the housing. Now, what does that housing look like? It's going to look different for different people, right? I mean, there was a lot of publicity on the story of Mark Rippey. Man was in Solano County. He was blind. He was mentally, he had schizoaffective disorder. He had been in a bad car wreck and had massive frontal lobe damage, and he was blind. His family tried to take care of him multiple times. Then he lit fires. He wouldn't stay on his medication. They finally had to say, you have to go. So he has been homeless. He was homeless, God rest his soul, he died for 17 years with his family, just taking him food on the streets, taking him things on the streets, calling the county every single day to get help. Nobody could help him. So he ended up dying of an incredibly severe infection that he acquired. He was arrested probably 20 plus times, spent time in jail. And died. So it is for people like that. And it doesn't just make the person, but people say we want accountability. It's not just accountability for the person to be able to follow the treatment plan, but it's also for that county will be charged $1,000 a day if they can't maintain that plan.
Can you ask who that is?
Sure. It's Susan Eggman from District 5.
Yeah.
Getting them to give medication.
That's always the story. It's just engagement with that person.
People cannot hear.
Oh, the question was, how do you get people to be compliant? I mean, the way you get anybody to be compliant, it takes work. It takes work. And if the person is not compliant, then they just fall out of the program. Right, so there's nothing in there that says we are going to lock you up. You will be locked up if you go out and you commit another crime, or you will go out and be locked up if you do something and then you are 5150. Right, the point is to get people in the lowest level of care. The highest level of care, so this idea that we want to lock people up against their will, that is the highest level of care, right? Prison is the highest level of care. That is where our prison systems right now are our biggest mental health systems. So to those, our progressive friends who say it's not right to lock somebody up against their will, they should be able to make their own decisions. And again, these are folks we would not let buy a car because we would not find them competent to make a decision. And yet we think it's okay for them to be naked on a corner. So I disagree with our friends who say that. So, and prisons, of course, are our most expensive places to treat people. Our state hospitals are full right now to the brim with people who are incompetent to stand trial. Right, so these are folks we have not treated along the way, and they have continued to devolve and continue to become more ill and continue to be victimized and continue to have trauma inflicted on them. And then they end up committing a crime that's horrific. And then we have to try to take care of them and get them back into a place where they can stand trial to be found guilty. So our system is.
Hey, Kyoko, it looks like you may have just muted the main feed, so we're not hearing Susan anymore.
System of care that we possibly can. And that's why it's so important not just to focus on that very expensive back end, but the front end as well, which is why we put $7 billion into new services for kids to stand up programs and to stand up a platform for every child to be able to have a mental health assessment. And now to be able to work with healthcare plans, and especially those that serve our Medi-Cal population, to be able to do more work in the schools and to be able to build Medi-Cal for it. Another new system that's going online is now called CalAIM. Folks familiar with CalAIM? CalAIM is like Medi-Cal 2.0 to deal with the most high users of the healthcare user system. And in that system, then again, plans. In my county, it's a health plan of San Joaquin. I'm not sure what your county plan is for your Medi-Cal population, but those plans now will be required to contract with providers of housing, because housing is now going to be something that you can get with a prescription through these new programs that we're standing up. So again, it's not just like we're going to try to lock people out over here, but we're going to try to provide all the services we can along the way to reduce the amount of people that are going into this population. Right now, the largest group of people going into homelessness are people over 50. People over 50 are the 50% of the people going into homelessness now, and 50% of those, it's their first time experiencing homelessness, but they are low income workers who get evicted or the rent raises or one of those things and suddenly find themselves tumbling down. So that's what we want to try to do, is prevent that from happening at every turn possible as we continue to try to really work with those who currently find themselves on the streets.
And Susan, there's a question from the Zoom. Can you speak? Maybe we can hear. We can hear. So can you put it in the chat?
Okay.
That's better.
Terrible at standing still.
My kitty's name.
Can we get another question over here while you're trying to get that? Okay, cool, please.
My cat's name.
That goes through the Judicial Council, and they are currently meeting right now, working on putting those people together. And I don't remember the actual amount of funding, but there's a stream of funding that will go for those special judges. Again, William Manley out of Santa Clara County is taking the lead on it.
It's been all of the
A parent can be, not necessarily, because it is not a conservatorship process. Conservatorship process can occur if people aren't successful in care. But it is, the system's coming together. It's like Laura's Law that we've had before. I've done work on Laura's Law. Laura's Law came about because a young woman named Laura was killed in El Dorado County. She was a mental health worker and working with a client who was non-compliant with his medications and ended up murdering. And so there was a law that came about the Wilcox family, her parents, who just retired, to be able to treat those people who are at severe risk of hurting somebody, to be able to have more mandated, or at least a judge following them, making sure that they are compliant with medication. So it is similar to that, but with all systems taking part in it.
I'm interested in I'm interested in the nature of the cross that are in between emotional awareness to encourage that is regenerative agriculture, use of restorative
A lot. I mean, that's the way the state has been going for the past, decades. And so, I mean, water use is extremely, limited. So there are a multitude of programs housed in the Department of Ag for California that support those very kinds of things. I mean, pesticides are very regulated. In my opinion, some of our we have very severe regulations in California, which make it difficult to farm here. And so we have seen a reduction in small farms. I don't know if people think that's good or bad. I think family farms are healthy for an environment, but it's really hard to maintain them with the kind of requirements that we ask farmers to do. So it tends to then promote larger scale farming, who then have the resources to be able to do the kinds of programs that we like to see happen. So for every new regulation we put in place, there tends to be a reaction on the other side of a lot of the small farmers not being able to make it as well. And we've done a lot to try to really promote more small farms, more farmers of color, more women. And I'll tell you, when I first got into politics, I stopped talking to ag folks. It was all middle-aged men with flannel shirts and big bellies. They're my uncles, I know them. But now more and more it's women and young women of color who, come out of UC Davis or come out of somewhere, especially as it relates to wine growing and issues like that. Farmers market, there's a huge demand, and you can make a living on 5 acres with that. But if you get to larger scale, it is more difficult. We also have a crisis with our bees, right? You're driving over here right now, we have all these beautiful almonds, but there's only 25% of California beekeepers who are able to service those almonds. So you see truckloads coming out from all over the country right now, of trucks coming out from Minnesota and Texas, all over the country, to be able to service our California bees for pollination service business.
Space. They are serving fugitive jobs with my son-in-law very so he's seeing what's coming in and killing patterns. He's been working on the so-called being with it. One of the only level is there is there a way to okay, so to counter something extremely dehydrated,
I guess it hasn't, no, I mean, I don't think the state can make laws about tilling. And that is so exact, and farming in Death Valley is very different than farming. Right, I mean, there are incredible things being done, like in San Mateo's County, right, where the soil is different, the weather is different, which is gonna be very different than trying to farm in the Central Valley, where, you know, we have salt in the ground and hard soil, right? So we do a lot. We do a lot. I don't know what else.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Water.
Water.
Regulations. Water.
Streamline water.
Water. Even dams.
Yeah, there's a state water plan, and then there's the federal plan. Right, so there are two plans in place, both on the federal, right, where they're talking about Colorado River, a lot of talk about the Colorado River right now, and how much water we get from there, along with 5 other states who share with us in the basin. And then the California water plan, right, goes from Oroville all the way down and runs the conveyance. I will say on water in specific, I'm doing a bond this year to address flood and levees. Seen, you know, huge amount of levee failure and flooding issues. We haven't had any levee bonds since 2006. So I don't know that I get it all the way across the finish line, but I think we stake a claim that says there's probably going to be a larger resource bond that comes together, and we need to have a fair amount of it go for levees and flood control. In California law right now, if you do a bond for any project that you want to fund, you have to have multi-beneficial use. Which is a legal term, but it tries to get in the way of people doing dams and things like that. So that you have to have multi-benefits to be able to get funding for something. Very hard to have multi-benefits for a levee and flood issues. So we're trying to say it doesn't need to have that. But if it goes into a larger resource bonds, then it gets more complicated. There's a lot of folks who would like to have more dams. Environmentally, they're very difficult, they're very expensive, and they're never going to pencil out. Underground aquifers are our largest body of water, but I think that we need to continue to work on recharging and keeping our groundwater healthy. Under Brown in 2014, we passed SIGMA, which is a sustainable groundwater management plan. All people in an overdraft area have had to come together and come up with plans about how they're going to address their overdraft. That means fallowing thousands of acres of ground because there's not enough water. And so a lot of farmers are dealing with that right now, looking at their ground being fallowed, just because there's not enough water and you have to be able to sustain it. We're the last state in the nation to put a plan into place to measure our underground water, which was, you know, again, water is incredibly hard in politics. Yes.
Farming. People value to do a lot of work. And seeing technology and how they're going to do more direct and have great things for farmers to use. They're going to be involved to help the farmers to switch over and prepare.
You see very little flood irrigation anymore. If you see flood irrigation, it's probably going for some kind of recharge project. Almost all of our irrigation now is because you have to pay for water. So when you have to pay the prices that people are paying right now to farm, there is a huge benefit in making that as the same with pesticides. There's a huge benefit in making that as direct as you possibly can. So, you know, when I grew up, just two wires to get your tractor going. Now tractors have computers that are hooked up to say, you know, how much water does this need, how much pesticide does this need, all the different things that can be measured electronically by a farmer, sometimes still being in your house, being able to compute these things. So It depends on the system they have. If they're pulling off the California State project, then they're paying for it. Most every place that has a large degree of oil has some kind of irrigation district that they have to pay for their 8 foot of water that they receive. Pay for water unless you have your own ground one that you're pumping out of a well. But if you pump too much out of that well, that well's going to go dry eventually.
You can try.
Hello, can we ask a question?
Yes, I think I do.
Is somebody answering? I can't hear. They said go ahead. I'm sorry, we only hear fortunately we hear Senator Eggman, but anyway, I'll make it quick. Senator Eggman, I'm Andrew Turnbull of Inform Sunol, and we are from Sunol, and we were initially, and I'm also with Kyoko, a member of the Alameda County Coalition for Fair Redistricting, and got to know what was going on. We were initially told that you were going to be our state senator after redistricting, and then we finally found out later that that wasn't going to come into play until an election came up, and so we're back in Steve Glazer's district. Nevertheless, I guess I'm really glad that you came out to see us, because I'll just tell you straight up, when I heard that we had a state senator from Stockton, I was initially going, oh no, we're in trouble, because I thought that it would be a different politician. And then when we saw who you were, it was a great relief. And it's I wish that you were with us now, because then we could start to work with you. But anyway, can you give us a hint? Those of us that have been redistricted, should we be working with you, or should we continue to work with Stephen Glazer? Thank you.
You should continue to work with Stephen Glazer. He is your representative. I am encroaching on his territory. Don't tell on Zoom.
So does Livermore, where you're standing now, is this your district now, or are they also with Mr. Glazer?
My district ends at the top of the Altamont.
Okay, well, we're wonderful that you've come out to see us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed the travel. And I get your emails every day, Andrew.
Awesome.
And I love Sonoma. It's a cute little town. Thank you. Again, I will continue to work. One of the big things we're working on is a redo of the MHSA, which is the Mental Health Services Act. That will probably end up back on the ballot. When we first passed that in 2004, I think that's the one that taxes 1% on millionaires to be able to fund a lot of our mental health system. It was the way it was designed. There are some changes that people would like to see made. A lot to be able to use more of that. Not as my friend Supervisor Holly Mitchell will say, we don't just want to create housing for unicorns. We want to make them for actual people. And sometimes if there's too many restrictions on funding, people have to try to jump through too many hoops to be able to use it. So that's one of the things we're working on. I am also working to update the definition of gravely disabled. My water bond will be a big thing. One of the things, it's kind of a pet project we've worked on forever, is working on the right to repair. Californians throw away about 40,000 cell phones every single day. They go into the waste stream because we're not eligible to fix a lot of our own stuff. The tech industry has had a chokehold on us for years now. I mean, think about your dishwasher, right? Think about I have a 1954 Wedgwood oven that I work on and I'll never get rid of, because I know if I get a new one, it's going to die on me 2 years later. And they're going to tell me I need a new one, that we can't fix the one I have. BS, I say. We should be able to have, but if it's stock, then I do that. That's a different word, Andrew. But But we should be able to have how you fix that, the parts to be able to fix it, and to be able to get behind it. That doesn't interfere into anybody's technology rights. It just says you should be able to fix your own stuff, so we're not tied to go back to that same company a year later and buy another one for $1,200. Yeah. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. I got an agreement signed. Again, this is like my 5th year working on this. These kinds of things take a long time. I couldn't even get a hearing my first year. I made it all the way to approach this last year. You can't give up on stuff like this. And they just passed one in New York, but they watered it down so much that that's what happens sometimes. People like to try to get something passed. They water it down so much it doesn't do what they intended. That's not my style. I like to get it right. So yeah, it should include farm equipment, medical equipment. I almost got a medical one through during the pandemic when people realized X-ray machines would be down because you had to have somebody come in from the company and everyone was too busy. That a technician should be able to fix that. Electronics are electronics. So yeah, but we'll see. They kill it every year, but I'm not giving up. I'm not giving. Yeah.
So, we recently read about a poll, and it looks like 50% of Americans believe that major news outlets are intentionally living in American life. It's not like you kind of different part of your life. Both say everything people can do to comment on that, just kind of be overwhelming.
Yeah, I just try to go back to basics and tell people to be kind, right? Like focus on being kind. Does something sounds like bizarre? It probably is. And if you're feeling outraged, that's probably somebody's goal. Work more time in the yard. I mean, I tell people to turn it off. Don't read the comments, right? Don't go down those rabbit holes because then you just end up feeling so angry, and we all do. And it is bad for, I think, our mental health, our physical health. I do a lot more reading than I do watching things. But I agree. If I watch, and if I'm going to watch something, it's going to be like, my local news or MSNBC. And I can see it is, right? But that's what people want, right? I mean, the news outlets, especially the cable news outlets, are entertainment to a degree. And so they get paid by their viewers. So breaking news is going to get you there quicker. Even if you hear the same breaking news, an hour later, bro, it's done, right? But it's all it's the nature of what we seem to crave, right? People look for it. So I'm always telling people, I started breaking bread during the pandemic. I just bake a lot of bread and give it away and figure if we can break bread together, we can find something else to agree on. Yes. Mm-hmm. The library is always the best place to read academic journals if you possibly can. Generally, the AP, right, the Associated Press is going to be generally they have real reporters still. Like a lot of the online blogs and stuff, don't pay any attention to those. Those are just dudes sitting around their underwear trying to get you to read their stuff. They can't get you to talk to them in real life. I mean, local newspapers are a huge source, and it's so sad to me that they're going away. But I'll read the Guardian, I read Politico, I read things that I feel are fairly balanced. Every day I read the Apple News, and I pay the extra $7 to be able to click on everything. I get the LA Times, I get the Sac Bee, I get the Modesto Bee, I get the Stockton Record, I get the Chronicle, and the Washington Post. And I figure if I read through all of those, then you get a flavor. You get a flavor. And then I look at, I'll look at the Twitter, I'll look at the stuff. But I see a lot of stuff is just clickbait, right? Stuff that's trying to make you click on it. And then you see all the ads, right? As soon as you see all the ads, somebody's paying for you to click on that, and they're trying to catch you. So I say turn it off and go out and talk with your neighbor. Yeah. What, are you here for a class today? No. Okay. Okay, good. Good. Nice to see you here. Yeah. Well, the surrounding states. So I am a part of the there's something called NCLS, the National Council of State Legislators, and there's then they have NCLS West, South, East, West. So I attend those meetings and talk with other legislators like from Idaho and Wyoming and Utah. And it's very interesting, right? You talk to them and they definitely have ideas about things. But when I ask them, like, how many people do you represent, Senator? 1,500? Well, great, because I represent 1 million. The size of those states are so small compared to ours. It is very hard to be, and we have senior water rights, which is what people are upset about. We have senior water rights. They signed the contracts way back when that gave us a much larger percentage. They would kind of like to renegotiate that and would like us to take the percentages that they think of cuts that we should take. We have 40 million people. Stockton is about the size of, Stockton is bigger than the largest city in those mountain states. So it will take negotiations. We're all going to have to take less because there's just no more water. We're all going to have to take less, but it'll end up in the courts. We'll all continue to fight. So we agreed to take a certain amount less, but that hasn't meeting with approval yet. But the feds will have to work that one out because that's a federal project versus a state project.
I have a friend who's from Arizona. And he gave me a lot of articles from the editorial. Maybe it's probably that the majority of water is going from a lot of the energy. Aquarium and also the problem. And what is going to be done at that time, not to regulate that, but to discourage people using water for well. Wild canals and
For lifestyle.
Hi there, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm having some issues with my laptop, so I think I'm gonna do audio off of my phone and then hop in on my laptop. So just give me 1 second.
Yeah. So that's next speaker.
Okay. All right.
We have one question
What?
from so given the budgetary issues potentially on the horizon, what are you thinking about on the budget committees regarding funding and how do you balance keeping in development project moving, such as buying while keeping
The question is how do we keep projects on track?
Yeah, so it's kind of balancing act the new project, but then, we have to support a bar
Right.
while we have to develop link and high-speed rail and all those stuff. What's your thought?
So why do we need more rail?
No, how can we actually
Yeah.
balance it?
Yeah,
What is your opinion?
my opinion is it has to be balanced. It has to be balanced.
Yeah.
It is complicated. Again, we have done a really good job of making sure that we're not going to have to make deep cuts, but there's probably not going to be expansion. So one of the things that we do is any new idea put forth or any new funding will go to like one-time project versus doing something ongoing. Ongoing projects is where you end up getting yourself in a lot of trouble later. I don't know if that helps, but a lot of those projects are budgeted like 4 or 5 years in advance. So their annual funding is probably not going to be impacted. The expansion of services could potentially be impacted. Yeah.
I wanted to get back to respond to your question.
Oh, about water.
Costs are going to be more expensive. And then,
So you want my reaction to that? I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we are not at the point where we're telling people what they can grow yet. Yeah. Yeah, see, for everyone who wants to say we should all be vegetarians, there are a lot of other people who say, don't tell me what to eat. I'm an American. This is my country, and we can do what we want. So we have a constitution here that we have to work within the confines of. And telling people what and where they can grow things and what and where they can eat is so far a line too far. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Because water is in Arizona. When the water becomes so expensive, it becomes limited.
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball to answer that. I mean, some would say it's already there. But it continues to be profitable because people continue to farm. Yeah.
The one way the state if the state is subsidizing certain agriculture, at least in the border, that I continue to take it.
There's no subsidy for like for beef. Steak is not subsidized. Yeah. I think they subsidize like soybeans and stuff in the Midwest, but more specialty crops are subsidized if it's a bad crop year, right? Someone gets crop insurance.
So I have one. Why you mentioned, you represent 1 million people. Isn't it time to actually increase the seats? So now we have 40 seats and 80 seats. And you guys are so representing so many population, and it's in my mind it's kind of impossible. Is there any prospect
Of doubling the seats? It would have to go to the ballot. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. One of my colleagues, I mean, for me, it's not bad. I have a colleague who represents Eastern California. So she represents from Tahoe all the way down to the border. 13 counties. I mean, you can't drive it in a day. 13 counties she represents. That's, but that's how much land it takes to make up 1 million people. Whereas in Los Angeles, you could represent, a 3-mile radius, but you have the density. Yeah. Yeah. So I certainly wouldn't be opposed to expanding it.
started?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, well, that was through the Energy Commission. They simply changed the amount of people put back into the grid, which from their perspective was done because, for others to get subsidies, everybody has to pay. And a lot of that, and poor people, that's the major part of their bills, right? Go to power and things like that. I did a bill in 2015. It was $1 billion solar bill for multifamily housing to have solar on top for renters, for them to be able to get the direct benefits. I feel like until we really spread it out, like who's eligible for solar and who's not, we don't make a real dent into it until we make it important for everybody. So we'll redo that again this year and make it also so they can be freestanding. Right now they have to be on multifamily units to make it be freestanding. So they'll continue to work towards expansion of electrification that's continuing to happen. And I think you'll see more and more requirements, new building as it goes up, a lot of them will have solar, public buildings as they go up will have solar and have to have a plan for that. I'm also, speaking of ag, a proponent for biomass. People don't like that either, but without having the feedstock for biomass, then you have open burns occurring in the fields. And that's worse for our lawns and environment. So there will continue to be a push. I was in Japan this last year, we're looking at a real push towards hydrogen also. So hydrogen energy will, I think, between that and electrification, we'll be able to get off fossil fuels entirely. I don't know about my lifetime, but we'll get there. Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you.
Yep.
It's to Greg from San Joaquin County. This is my friend, Rodrigo from San Joaquin. It could be 400. And somebody who said they were bringing representative, and we have another very marvelous.
Would you? Yeah. Why don't you come up?
Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Ransom. I see a couple of familiar faces. You all may know me. I am from Tracy. Well, I live in Tracy, born and raised in San Francisco before I escaped San Francisco to come for affordable housing, which we were able to find in Tracy. So very happy to be here. The senator is amazing, and I've been fortunate enough to have been mentored by her for the last 12 years to watch her work. I've served on the Tracy City Council. I've served on a planning commission. So I understand local government. I understand the needs, and I also understand that Alameda County is a little bit different than San Joaquin County, and that those needs are different, and it's important to be able to balance those things out and represent the entire district, not just the district I live in. Even living in Tracy, California is different than living in Stockton, California. Our income, the income levels, we're like the rich cousins to Stockton, right, where I live. And so it's going to be pretty much the same here in Livermore. And that's also for Pleasanton and Dublin, So I would like to say that, I really believe in working collaboratively. I grew up, my grandmother was a missionary, and so I learned very early on that you need to work with people and to serve the people. And that's really how I lead. Is I lead through service. I mean, literally grew up unloading 18-wheelers and really teaching people how to access food in their community, how to access healthcare. Professionally, I'm currently the district director for a congressman here. Some of you have come and knocked doors for him, but I've done a lot of different things, and I know this is not my time, but since I'm here, I'm going to just kind of tell you a little bit. Mental health is near and dear to me. 18 years ago, I founded an organization that provided mental health in schools because there's this very huge intersection between mental health and homelessness, as well as graduation rates and a lot of other things that is happening with our young folks, and being able to address things early and teach young people how to advocate for their own mental health has been very, it's important, and it really helps our young people. I fought when I came to Tracy 22 years ago, and I know that because that's the age of my middle child. When I came to Tracy 22 years ago, you didn't see homeless people. And then about 10 years ago, just like started seeing homeless people. So on my city council, they fought against me about, making sure we did something for homelessness. And so we worked really hard. I got 87 organizations together to work with me in order to be able to put a homeless task force together. And we were finally able to pass a homeless shelter. We started off with a warming center. And eventually got a homeless shelter, and now we're able to deal with some of the root causes of homelessness. We talked about housing. I was the lone vote against recertifying our housing element because it did not address median or moderate income levels in our community. And I think it's really important that we have housing at all levels because that's what a community is. It's all kinds of people, and we need to be able to represent the entire community. So I don't want to, go on too long, but I just want to let you know that I'm here to work for the people and with the people in order to make sure that we are properly represented and that we are able to move our community forward in ways that will help us, really live, especially in trying times. Things are really hard right now and we want to make life better all the way around for our community. So, thank you for those.
You have 20 years.
Really good jeans, y'all. We're always big, so, yeah, I have some good jeans, but thank you very much.
So much, and thank you, Senator. I'll move to the camera, I can see myself. Our next speaker is Zahra Hajee, and she has been the Bay Area field representative for U.S. Senator Alex Padilla.